Hello? I am here. Hello. I see I have a viewer. No, I have 0 viewers. I have 1 viewer. But I cannot see anybody. Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Well, I can hear everybody. That's very nice. Thank you. Yes, I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't see you. Okay. Okay. Hello. Hello. I can't hear anybody or see anybody. John Hall. Hello. I can hear you, yes. John Hall. I can hear you. You broke up a little bit. Yes. Yes. Well, first of all, the Linux project is a kernel, and it was a creation of a kernel to have a good operating system. It was never the intention of the Linux project to have even a free kernel, free as in Richard Stallman's definition of free. It was determined to have a good kernel, something that people could use. And it was kind of an afterthought to use the GPL license. So to say that we've forgotten about it is questionable. The problem that I've had with Richard trying to call it GNU Linux is that it's not only made up of GNU code, but it's also made up of the X Windows system, the send mail from as a separate project, things out of BSD, and later on, even more code. Richard dismisses this because he says, well, it's the GNU code is the bulk of what most people think of as an operating system. But I think that most people think of an operating system or distribution in terms of things like Ubuntu or Debian or others. I think that there are people in the Linux camp, the Linux community, who believe very strongly in the GPL. There are other people who believe in the concept of open source. And the fact that Richard doesn't agree with all of those, he's free not to agree with it. If he says that we have to agree with it, then in fact, he's taken away some of our freedoms. That is my feelings on it. Well, I hear it on the phone right away. You hear my results a minute later. Hello. I lost you. I don't hear the question, and my phone is beeping. I'm going to hang up my phone, and you can try calling me again. Hello? Could you repeat the question, please? I didn't hear the question. I say, so what was the first part of the question again? Digital sovereignty? Well, yes, it does. Let me answer that now. First of all, I love my country very much, the United States. Okay, I hear you. I love my country very much, the United States. However, after September the 11th, 2001, I went to Brazil and gave a warning that said because of the Patriot Act, that Brazilians and other people around the world could no longer trust the United States to protect their privacy. I think that I was vindicated with some of the events around Edward Snowden and some of the things which have been disclosed since then. Things where the NSA and other federal agencies have violated people's privacy without the protections of the court. This is made worse by the fact that there are different governments with different rules, different protections, and the internet tends to flow through all of them. And so, even if you disagree with the United States, there is so much technology which comes from the United States or it happens via the internet that you can't trust the laws of the United States to protect you. And since a lot of you do not vote for people in the United States, you actually have very little or no input as to what this does. So this is one reason why I tell people that you have to be very, very careful with your data and with your programs. And that the use of closed source software and closed internet capabilities mean that you have no way of detecting whether or not there's a Trojan horse or a trap door or something else which is in your code. I point to free software not as a end-all be-all solution to this, but the fact that it does allow you to be able to look at the source code of the software, and if you really want to be able to build that software yourself or have somebody that you trust to build it. Unfortunately, that's not enough because there are these things inside of the software, which most people call binary blobs, that typically run at the capabilities of the root system, which is super user capabilities. And they would allow people to take control of your computer or to execute a trapdoor. These binary blobs are typically in things like drivers, and particularly video and graphics drivers. They're also in things like the BIOS. And this is one path that Richard Stallman has been going on for some time now to try and get rid of all the binary blobs which are in the system. That still is not enough, however, because even if you take a look at things like a CPU, the Intel CPU has microcode in it. And the microcode is a tiny little program that every time you execute a machine language instruction, this microcode takes over and actually tells the hardware what to do. And a very good person, a very good programmer, could actually put a trapdoor in the microcode, or put a piece of microcode in that would allow a trapdoor to exist. And you would have no way of detecting this. And because the Intel processors are made by Intel, which is a US-based company, they are subject to US-based laws. There are other processors, such as MIPS, ARM, which are not only RISC processors, making it very much harder to put this type of trapdoor in, but they are also done by fabrication plants, which are around the world and in various other countries, which gives these countries a much better chance of actually doing and making sure that these processors have no Trojan horses in them. Now you say, well, Mad Dog, I don't have the capability of inspecting every single line of code that comes from my operating system, or making sure that these processors have no trapdoors in them. And that's true. Most people don't. However, because these are made by multiple companies in multiple places, it's a lot easier to rely that, it's not just one company or one country or one entity who is trying to break into your system. So I've been very vocal about this, and I'm trying to let people know that this is a problem. It is a very hard problem to solve, and only by the use of free software, inspection of that software, creation of hardware which is free of binary blobs and is actually produced either in your own country by your own loyal people, or produced by a country which you have a good relationship with. And I don't want to blame just the United States for this. I mean, the same thing happens in China, the same thing happens in Japan, the same thing happens. Spies and spyware have been around for a long time. It's just that recently they've had the capabilities of capturing huge amounts of data and funneling through this data and violating people's general privacy. No, I'm not. And this is a good example. I think, of course, the United States has a great deal of power over other countries accepting trade agreements. I mean, that's the whole concept of a trade agreement. And one of the things I do not like about the trade agreements is that they are are putting things into the agreements which I don't think are actually beneficial to the other countries who are signing them. Well, I and I think a whole series of other people have been a little disappointed that Linux didn't make it as far onto the traditional desktop as we thought it was going to make it. Um, I think, however, the traditional desktop is not going to disappear, but is going to be de-emphasized as a most important interface for people to do their work through. It will still be an important interface. Just like I don't think that the cloud is going to completely take over from a regular data center or data centers which are distributed. There's a certain type of programming that requires very, very high interaction, very low latency. And that obviously is not going to be in the cloud for a while. So if ever. So I think that, it's disappointing that you can't go down to your local store and see computers that have Microsoft on them and Linux on them and Apple on them. But from the fact that Linux, out of the 500 fastest supercomputers in the world, Linux works on 486 of them. The fact that Linux is the most used operating system in embedded system design. About 50% of the servers in the world run Linux. I think that for an operating system that had virtually, or comparatively speaking, no real advertising, it didn't have huge amounts of marketing money behind it like it did with Intel and with Microsoft. I think that Linux has come a long way. And in reality, I think that it's not Linux which is going to be driving things in the future. It's going to be free software, the stacks above the Linux kernel and the GNU Linux operating system. I think those are going to be the parts that are most interesting, and people just using the Linux operating system to facilitate that. So I think it's more important that we keep pushing the concept of free software, open source, and make sure that people understand that this gives them control of their software. With closed source software, the people that control your software are the people who make it. They own the software. And if you take a look at the license, which you typically sign, you can see that. With free software, the ownership is given back to you. You become at least a part owner of that software when you contribute to it, when you use it, when you work with it, when you change it. And this allows you to have control over your software and your business. So in the future, what do I hope? I hope that more and more people understand these concepts of free software, why it's good for them, and they insist that their governments and their business partners use open standards, open data, and open software. Good. Hello? Well, I believe it is up to the duty of the companies like Amazon to completely spell out the types of data which they collect and send on. I know that there are, for example, there's a very bad situation in the United States right now where women who want to go to an abortion clinic because they feel that they have to have an abortion are targeted by anti-abortion people based upon the GPS information that is gathered by their phones and the fact that they are in a abortion clinic. Now, whether you believe in abortion or not, this is an invasion of their privacy. And there's a company which gathers this information and then sells it to anti-abortion groups so that they can send information directly to the person's phone who's in the abortion clinic. This is a little bit like you may be using the computer and you look for some type of vacation spot, and then all of a sudden for the next 3 weeks you have vacation spots showing up beside everything you do. Now, some people like this because they're interested in vacation spots, and other people feel it's an invasion of their privacy. But it's also a trade-off as to whether or not you're going to get the benefits and the services of companies like Amazon. Because these companies do sell this information, and that's how they make money. That's how they sell the services which you think of as being free. There are no such thing as truly gratis services. Somebody has to pay for the equipment, somebody has to pay for the electricity, somebody has to pay for the people that provide the service. And that is, in a lot of cases, the marketing of this information. Now, a lot of these companies are very good about stripping off the personal aspects of it. And so what they're interested in is general trends of what is happening. And we've always had that type of problem. It's been done by credit card companies. It's been done by other companies answering surveys. And you could take a look and say, well, this is invading my privacy. And it is. But there's not much you can do other than get your legislators to enact privacy laws or read the privacy contracts that you sign when you sign up for a service. And if you don't, and to think about what that means. Because there are people out there who will take advantage of you not reading your privacy policy, of you just signing up for this, and they will gather all the data they can and sell it to whoever will pay them for it. So if you don't like the fact that Ubuntu does this or makes these type of deals with companies like Amazon, then don't use Ubuntu as your distribution. Go with a different distribution, like Debian, who tends to have a ruling against that and a policy against that. Or you make Ubuntu aware of the fact that you don't like it, and this is the reason you're not using Ubuntu anymore. Did I answer your question? Hello? Yes. Well, this is not a. These type of problems are real. There is documented cases where the United States government has intercepted computers coming from the manufacturer and going to the customer and has put in Trojan horses so that they can listen to what the customer is doing. Before the Patriot Act, this would require this agency or this group to go to a court and say, we suspect that this company or this person is doing this, or this government is doing this, and we need to put in this Trojan horse to listen to them. This is like tapping a phone. It's called a wiretap in the United States, and it would require a specific order from that court for a specific person or a specific company to go ahead and spy on them. The Patriot Act removed this requirement, and so it's much more general now. And plus the fact that the concept of spying on non-U.S. citizens has been around for a very long time. And so the protections that we have in the United States with our Constitution were interpreted to be only for citizens of the United States. And therefore, citizens of other countries like Brazil are not protected by the constitutional protections of privacy. So when this whole thing broke open with Snowden and the documents he released, President Dilma found out that the United States was spying on her, was intercepting her email messages. And she got very upset by this and said, well, we have to block this. We have to have a more secure email system. And that's when I wrote a blog article saying, This is just the tip of the iceberg. So the fact that these types of technological things can be done, and that a lot of these companies, Google, Amazon, Intel, even companies that produce open source software like Red Hat, are all US based companies. And if the court and if the government of the United States comes to these companies and say, we have the legal papers, you have to do this, you have to put this type of stuff into your software, those companies will either do it or their leaders will go to jail. It's as simple as that. And today there's a very big battle going on between Apple and between the United States government as to whether Apple should put a trapdoor into every single iPhone to allow the United States government to decrypt its data and to basically spy on that iPhone customer's data and communications. So you, as a non-US citizen, should be very alarmed about this, because then when you get an iPhone from the United States, there'd be no way for you to tell whether that trap door was there or not. And this is a problem. I think it's a problem, because I am one person who believes in very strong encryption. I believe in not only for people's privacies, but the fact that authentication of who a person is typically depends upon really good encryption. And so if you want to communicate with me and you want to prove to me that you are who you are, then I would ask you to send an encrypted message to me, which could only be decrypted if I knew your public password and you encrypted it with your private password. That's good encryption, allowing good authentication. And the people that are trying to weaken this encryption and weaken the operating system's protections are people who don't understand this. If the government thought that you were doing something wrong and targeted just you, they would be able to decrypt whatever you had encrypted. They would put enough CPU power on it to be able to figure it out. What the government is really scared of is if everybody starts encrypting everything all the time, then they would not be able to decrypt everything all the time. And they would have to go back to the original method of first getting other information in different ways to go get a court order to decrypt your information. That's what they're afraid of. So if everybody started using the strongest encryption to encrypt everything, there's no amount of computing power on the face of the earth that could decrypt everything to see what was important and what was not. So, I think that people should be very, very interested in this, because otherwise we're going to live in a fishbowl. Yes. Well, there's a lot of things that make Linux easier and more appealing to use these days than it was 5 or 10 years ago. One thing is that there's more device drivers, more companies that are supporting Linux with their products. This has not only come from the fact of Linux itself becoming more useful and more prevalent, but also the Android operating system utilizing Linux as the kernel for Android. So a lot of tablets and things like that have had device drivers written for them that are used in the Linux kernel and therefore allow the desktop GNU Linux system to have support along with that. The other thing is that, yes, you're right. A lot of the different applications are now web-based. The problem with that is that, in effect, they're now closed source products again, unless the company actually shows you the source code that they're using on their websites. So we go back to these companies being in control of the software again. And if you start becoming dependent upon that cloud-based software, and all of a sudden you get up one day and you go to that website and it says, oh, the website's for sale, and or there's a completely different screen up there you've never seen before because the company decided to bring out the next major version of the software, or the company decided to charge for the software and you hadn't been expecting that and therefore you need to pay for it now. This is you still have no choice. So I think it's very important for people to understand where the companies are that have this web-based software, just like they have to understand where the companies are that deliver software products. Are these products closed or are they open? Do you have a way of quickly gathering up your data that these programs have stored and moving them to a different cloud-based system? The cloud is, yeah, it's great because we have things like Gmail and stuff that we can have a nice mail system that is set up for free. But on the other hand, what would happen if Gmail went away tomorrow? If Google just all of a sudden became a non-company? And before people say, well, that's impossible because Google is so big, I tend to point to things like Kodak or Enron or Digital Equipment Corporation. That was the second largest company in the face, second largest computer company on the face of the earth. And they all disappeared. So you have to think about what happens when the web-based application that you're using goes away or changes so dramatically or starts charging you money for doing what you thought was going to be free and what you'd have no money to pay for. The computer, unfortunately, is only a tool. It is not an end-all, be-all, end thing. And you have to think about using the computer the same way you think about using a hammer or a saw. What is the best tool for the job for me? Did I answer your question? Okay. Hello? Hi. Well, I'm here. Well, the free software community can't really deal with this per se. The end user has to deal with this, and when they before they start using the service, they have to ask themselves the question of how dependent am I going to be on this service? Because even if the person who starts the service has the best of all possible uh, wishes for it, it may be that as the service goes on, that they have a bad business model and their ability to offer that service goes away. Maybe they cannot pay for the servers which are providing the service. Maybe the number of people that are working on it uh, go down to zero. Maybe there's lots of different reasons why a service could disappear on the net. And so either if the software behind it is licensed in such a way that perhaps another entity can take it over and start up another service that would be perhaps a better business model, then that's a possibility. Now, a kind of an example of this is what happened with Blender. Blender, as a lot of people know, is a 3D animation tool. And it at one time was a private, for-profit product that was sold. It was very good, but very expensive. And after a while, the company that was making it said, we can't do this anymore. We're going out of business. And all of the users of Blender gathered together and purchased the software from the company as they were going out of business and started up an open source project to keep it alive. And Blender has turned into a very successful open source project, which makes its money to keep itself going through grants by the government, through people buying courses, through a whole series of different things. They generate enough money to keep themselves going. And they keep generating enough money to make Blender a better and better product. So the people who use cloud services, you have to do this with your eyes wide open. You have to say to yourself, how is this cloud service making the money that it needs to keep itself alive? What is their business model? Are they selling upper level types of things which don't affect me? I may never need them, but that's the way they make their money. Are they selling advertising on their site, which is the way that they make their money? There's very, very few things on the internet that are completely free of every type of advertising and every type of situation. I mean, it's just unreasonable. And for the people that don't want that type of situation, then what you're going to have to do is go into some type of distributed, curated type of internet support. And in effect, you pay for the equipment because the equipment is in your house and distributed. You pay for your internet connection. You maintain the software that's in your house, or you at least install it when it needs and upgrade it when it needs to be done. And that is, that provides the base services for all this type of stuff. But Services which are more focused to a smaller audience, there has to be a business model. And you should understand what that business model is, or someday you may find out that your service goes away. Yes? Sure. Okay. Fine. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the actual question. Yes, I can. Thank you very much. I hope I hope that next time I I hope the next time that my health will be better and that I will be able to attend campus party in person. I enjoy going to campus party a lot, and I enjoy working and seeing all of your campus arrows. So I hope that the next time I will be able to see you in person. I I would be able to I would be able to do it at 5 o'clock. Yes. Okay, fine.